you hear me, Dave?
Yes, I can. I'm just trying to set up the YouTube while we're sitting here.
The thing for the Grove School, that starts at 7:30, right?
No, that starts at 7. We'll do that one first.
Okay.
Yeah, that was advertised for 7. Hey, Marlene.
Hi,
How are you?
good, and you?
Good.
Hi, Marlene.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I see you're in another world.
Wait, that's actually a drone photograph of, that's the Madison Beach Hotel
Wow.
below the moon. Someone, I don't know, someone in town took it a couple of years ago.
Wow, that's nice.
Isn't that a nice picture?
That is cool.
Yes.
So I thought, why not?
Good idea.
And you're ready to make those changes to the minutes?
Yes, I have my notes.
I'm gonna let you announce them and say you found them.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Tom. Oh, he's still connecting.
Did you get Joe's email?
Yes, I did. Yeah, he's got graduation tonight, right?
Interesting. I'm maybe glad I asked that question.
Yeah,
So Tom's with us?
he is. It still says it's connecting to audio.
He may not be talking to us, but he looks very distinguished there.
Hey, Tom, did you call in with your phone? If you did, give me a thumbs up. Okay, I think I might have to allow you to talk. Go ahead.
I'm here.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just had to make sure I turn you on because I guess that goes to the attendee portal. And so I just needed to turn you on.
Okay. Yeah, it's just if I try to use voice over IP, it just doesn't work.
Okay. Hey, Jim. Can you hear us, Jim?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I'm having problem with the audio on this computer. I had a problem with it the other day. So I may have to go on my cell phone or something,
Okay.
or my iPad. So I'm going to sign off.
Okay.
So hopefully I can get on by the time the meeting starts.
Sounds good. Hey, John. Hey, John.
Hey,
I
Dave,
couldn't
there's a
hear you
little
earlier.
gre-
Check it.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I can. Yep.
Okay.
Enable your video.
Hey, Dave, they make Grecian formula for those beards.
Ah, it's really, it's almost white. All the stress you guys put me through.
Hey, but you're not talking about me. I don't put you through any stress.
Dave, Tom Stevens here. Can you hear or see me?
I can both, yes.
Good
How are you
deal.
doing, Tom?
I'm good. I'm 3 months without a haircut. I'm waiting for my hairdresser to call me. So I'll save you.
I think you have to call them. I think it works that way.
Well, I've got a backup lined up, but it's July 7th was the first they can do it. So it's gonna be interesting.
They're dropping like flies with carpal tunnel syndrome, those barbers.
Yeah.
Oh,
Snipping away 12 hours a day for 2 weeks.
first year I was married, my wife was cutting my hair, and the third time the scissors flipped over, I lost my mind, so she won't cut it anymore. So.
Well, Tom, you can always go back to the 70s and 60s and use an elastic.
Oh God, that's my roommate used to do. He'll hold a string in his teeth, and he'd use a razor. I went to the
I think
Army.
I think the long hair looks good on you, Tom.
John, thank you. You look pretty good yourself. John, Chris sent you an
Hey,
email.
my daughter's cut my hair, so you know whatever.
Oh, it looks good. I have the same technical problems I had a month ago. I'm going to run over to your office. Are you here in Madison right now?
I am.
Okay. I left everybody hanging.
You got my email though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Everyone.
Hey, Dave, can I ask you a question on General's residence real quick?
Sure.
They're gonna start site work fairly soon. Do we want to have a meeting with what's his name, Robin, before that happens?
Yeah, I think so. I was on a meeting with Robin and Sal and Tom actually the other day and Bob Russo. And one of the suggestions was that we have Sal was going to coordinate a meeting between me, you, probably
Okay.
him and the neighbors. So I'd say talk to
Okay.
Sal, but I do think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because I think the guy that's gonna, John Giannotti, I think is gonna run the project for them, and I met him there today. And I didn't want to say anything without talking to the rest of the people, but I feel more comfortable if we had a meeting to discuss all the stuff that's gonna come down
Yeah, I think that's a
before
good
we
idea.
actually take it down. Okay.
Yep.
All right. I'll leave it to you. Just give me a
Yeah,
little
and if you
advance
think-
notice.
you
I'll make
guys-
sure I'm there.
I mean, if you think it benefits for me, mask up and meet out on site, we could do that too. I'm sure the neighbors would probably.
Probably the best way to go, I think. Okay.
Yeah, so why don't you talk to Sal and suggest that, and then we can do it that way.
Okay.
Those tweaks we talked about, Dave, on the plan will probably be Wednesday. I'm taking off tomorrow. I'll be back Monday afternoon. So,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Where are you going, Tom?
Cape Cod, Minister's Pond.
Really?
Yeah. Yep. Long weekend. That's gonna last me a year.
You're coming back on Monday?
Yep. I'm not gonna leave clients crying.
I'm just gonna throw it out there. I would take Monday off also.
Tell you what, Judy would entertain you. She'd love to have you up there. Bring work
Well,
clothes.
Judy's here in my office and she says to take off Monday also, okay?
She's been up there a week, actually. She's hoping for
Hey,
a
guys.
shark.
Hey, Mike,
Hi, Dave.
how are you?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Sitting next. We're trying to get Richard's computer booted up.
Perfect.
There we go. It's about to cooperate, I think.
You think? It's just so, this is not the way it usually works. No, maybe not. It's not, it should show something up here soon. And then I can.
Yep.
Showing adaptive writers control.
Good evening, Mr. Mathers. Did you see the my background, John, by chance?
Ron, where the hell are you?
That is
It's not cooperating.
somebody posted on Facebook a couple of years ago. It's from a drone. And over here,
That's it, huh?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
over the
Nice.
Clark Madison Beach Hotel.
Yeah, very nice. I love that. That's one of the largest moons I've ever seen.
I was thinking.
Yeah, it's a beautiful photo, but he had
What?
phone and took the photo, and it's not enough.
The one from Dave.
Very nice.
Nope.
And everybody on the beach, I checked, everybody on the beach in that photograph is
That's that.
in compliance with the
So where's the calendar here?
declaration.
Start a meeting, join a meeting.
No.
But not start a meeting?
Nope. Join a meeting. It would be
No
join a
problem.
meeting, but you're not in the right app. Gmail. You get out of Gmail and go into that.
Just get out of
now.
Gmail altogether?
Yep. Just cross.
And where do you want me to go?
And then hit this button right here. Not that one.
Oh,
That one.
this is-
Yep. Yep. So yeah, just let it think.
There you go.
Oh, that's the first one you opened. You can X out of that.
Now, if this?
Yeah. Out of that. Yep.
Now hit this again?
That one. Yep.
So the same thing, right?
No, the other one was said Word. It says
Oh, okay.
Outlook. Outlook is where your Grove email lives.
You can see my technology prowess.
It's all good.
Don't tell me.
Nope.
Don't tell too many people.
Our little secret.
Most people know it. It's just so slow. This is Zoom, not Teams, is that what this is?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Don't hit that though.
It looks like it's not picking up or something, right? Keep saying process.
Yeah. Something else is running.
Yeah, let's stop.
Ron, it's 7, but I think we should wait a few minutes. People are still coming on.
Yeah, we
And,
need commissioners.
Yeah, let's
As-
give it a.
Oh, Elliot. Hi, Joel.
So who's that? No.
Hey.
All right.
Go down.
Go down past
Yep.
it.
Yep. Keep going. Keep going. Look for David. That's that one right
Over
there.
here, just
Yep.
hit this.
Yep. Click that twice. Click it twice.
Again?
Yep. 2 times fast. Yep. There you go. Now click that.
Right here?
Click here to jump.
I just touched it.
Yep.
Then get rid of this.
Yeah, get rid of that.
Type new. No.
Okay, so hit that. Click it. And then just give it a second.
Open Zoom meeting.
Yep, open Zoom meeting.
Yeah, this is awful.
Yep, give it a minute. It's launching.
I don't have to download it.
No, no, you're good. It's just your computer's a little bit slower. And then remember, your camera's up here,
There we go.
so you can see yourself. It's cutting half of your face off. Yep.
All right. And so I would join the video, man?
Yep.
Thank you. I know when you get through the whole thing, yeah, piece of thing up. Yeah. You see your whole face? I got something here. Really want to read things. Let it go back there. Yes. I can't tell. You can leave it there if you want to. Somebody either adds the door.
John Mathers, we're getting a really good view of the very tip top of your head. I don't know if you noticed that. There you go.
Can you? Hey, Dave.
Hey, Richard, how are you?
I'm good. I was good. No.
Seems like you're all, you know.
Here we go. I don't know where I am. Oh, looky.
Yeah, that's my phone.
Oh, okay.
You're actually talking through my phone.
I'm talking to your phone. Okay.
All right. We're all set now.
I can't see Dave.
Okay, on our end, I'm still, I believe, waiting for 3. Jim Madison called in and he was gonna try and reach us another way. I don't see him on board, Dave.
He
Yeah.
might be now. I might have just moved him over. He came into the attendee link and I think I just moved him.
And, we haven't connected with, have we? And,
I'm sorry, repeat.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can, Giselle. Hi.
Hey, Dave, I'm on. Can you hear me?
We can.
But you can't see me.
Yeah, I don't know why. Do you have your,
Yeah, I'm on my iPad.
huh?
Now I see John Cunningham. Now I see you.
Maybe you might have to start your video. I'm gonna, let me see how this works.
Dave, you see everything all right?
There you go. I think, there you go, Jim.
Okay. All right. Oh, God. Jesus.
You think you guys never done this before?
Well, no, but I haven't used my iPad. I've used my computer.
No, I think there's quirks seemingly every time we do this, you know, so.
Dave, it's Ira Bloom. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, Hi, Ira, how are you? Good,
Good, thanks.
thank you.
I see we gotta do that.
Ron, it seems like I think most folks have joined. You want me to just run down the list of commissioners that are on now? You're muted, Ron.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense, Dave.
Okay, so Ira Bloom just talked. He's the town attorney that's going to be assisting the commission on the 503 Old Toll Road application. Jim Madison is here, Ron Clark, Joel Miller, Marlene Kennedy, our clerk, Peter Roos, Ron Bodenson, Elliot Hitchcock, Giselle McDowell, John Mathers, Shona Hay, Tom Berland.
And Giselle is here. I haven't seen her.
Yeah, Giselle is here. She was just a second ago. There she is. Yeah, Giselle's here.
I'm here.
Before we start the meeting, I just wanted to go on the record. We have Ira Bloom joining us tonight, who is our town attorney. And some of the folks who are following Toll Road, he's going to be talking about guiding us application, those deliberations. May not know about it, Ira. So I would just take a minute and mention that Ira, as I said, is our town attorney. He is one of the preeminent and one of the respected attorneys and municipal attorneys in the state. In the, excuse me. He's been the town attorney for the town of Westport since the late 90s. He's been the town, he is the town attorney. He's been the town attorney and is the town attorney in New Canaan since about 10 years ago, ours, of course. He's always a featured speaker at the Connecticut Bar Association seminars and presentations they give for people like us from time to time. And for the last 10 years or so, he's been recognized by Thomson Reuters as don't get a big head, Ira, please, but
Keep going, please.
super lawyer in New England in the matters of land use and zoning law. So well suited to help us, and he's a great asset. Can we mute that call? Who's ever?
Yeah, if you're not speaking, if everybody doesn't mind to maybe mute themselves, there's a little background noise. That'd be helpful.
Thank you. So I thought I'd give that little background, but we're very fortunate to have someone of Ira's caliber advising not only the town, but all of our land use boards and commissions. So I know you won't be on for a while, Ira, but welcome, and don't give me a report card, okay?
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Nice to see you and everybody else. I'll be ready when you get to this.
Good. Our first item on the agenda is application 20-06 plus a coastal site plan. It's at 175 Cops Road. It's map 47 lot 6. The owner applicant is Debolina LLC. It's a special exception permit modification to demolish an existing school building and build a 2-story community center with a new septic system and grading. Before I do that, I'd like to sit Dr. Hay. And Doctor, welcome back to Planning and Zoning. You are our hero. She has not been at the past couple of months. She's been kind of preoccupied with her physician skills down at Yale New Haven Hospital. And we thank you for all you've done to help everybody. So welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you, Ron. It's nice to be here. Thank you, Ron. Sorry, I missed all of you. Nice to be back here.
That was unfortunately an absolutely acceptable excuse. And we missed you, but thanks for your services there. So I'd like you, if you don't mind, to sit in for Brian Richardson. And Peter Roos, are you there? Peter's probably on mute. Peter?
I'm here.
Would you please sit for Joe Banowski, who's not going to be with us this evening?
Yep.
And this would be an application alone. We'll get to other things as we get on the road. So with that, I turn it over to the applicant.
Oh, you're on. Can you hear me? Oh, hold on.
Yes, Mike, I can.
You all right? You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good to see you, Ron. I haven't seen you in a long time.
You're looking well.
I think yourself too. It's good to be back. Here I am again. We took down the building. We had the okay to do that, and we're looking to build. We had the permit to do that, and so we're showing you a new community center that will be, I think, not only a singular building for our campus, but I think not only for ourselves, but for the town. Anybody driving by will see an exceptional building. It shouldn't come as a surprise because they don't look alike. I've changed architects in the process. And I was looking for a different kind of look, and I've got it. But the building itself is a building on a kind of a college model. I don't know if everybody knows about Grove, but we are a therapeutic boarding school for kids who have emotional issues. And a part of my way of looking at the therapeutic world is people programs that facilities. So each of those three pieces has importance in terms of the people that we hire and bring on to work with the children, the right kind of programs that we present for their continued health, and the kind of buildings that they live in and work in and go to school in. The buildings have a tremendous impact on their self-esteem and how they feel about the place they're in. I think that's really important to our mission. So this particular building, I don't know how much you want me to go into it in the sense of, we had an architectural competition with about 8 architects, and I interviewed all of them, and then we had I asked, I think it was 5 of them to submit drawings, and we picked Mike Serrano's firm to do that. And what you see is on one half of that building, I don't have the picture in front of me well, I guess yeah. So the right-hand side is kind of open, and the attachment to that is a student union, like a college, that has a small diner actually in there for kids to run their own sort of snack bar kind of luncheonette. It also has a school store, and it has a place for kids to congregate, talk, use their computers, and get the kind of the feeling of working in those kinds of groups. Since most of our kids are college bound, that would be very helpful. The second half to the left is an art center, and the downstairs has a place where we build stagecraft and also do costume making for our drama program, which is a pretty important piece of the program. The other part of the downstairs is for sculptural things, from ceramics to larger productions. And the upstairs is, I think, predominantly the fine arts, and it's pretty interesting and unique. It pieces of it run around on the top of the student union and can look down upon it, and can also, and obviously people down there below who would also be visitors and guests and family could also look up and see the art taking place. On the other end of that balcony, so to speak, significant gallery space for kids to display their works. To me, art has been an important piece of treatment, and the campus, for those of you who know it, has a lot of good sculpture from known artists on the property itself. We pay a lot of attention to horticulture. I have invited the boards to come visit in the past. There are a lot of faces, but anybody that's interested can either come singly or in a group. I'd be happy for people. Kind of proud of what we've done and with the town's assistance, quite frankly, because I think it's something like 14 buildings that have gone up with your approval, and it's made for a very exciting program addition. And the parents, when they come around, that's the first thing they talk about, how the place looks. And it's a combination of the buildings, the sculpture, and the horticulture, and the kids that show them around. So that's the building we want to put up. And I'll turn it over to Mike, who will introduce himself. And we made a really good connection in terms of our artistic sensibilities, I think. So I'm proud to have him working with me. Mike?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mike Serrano. I'm a principal at Fryer Architecture. We're a Connecticut firm. We're located out of Farmington, Connecticut, right up 79 to 9 and across from UConn Medical. Unfortunately, I don't get to meet you all in person, but this seems to be working for everybody. Maria Khan is also an architect working for my firm, and I'm going to have her take over the screen so she can put up images of the building. As when we're done going through the building and the statistics of the building, I'm going to hand it over to Tom Stevens to go through the site plan. So you can see what we're doing. You can see the technical documents. So, yes, we got it. Maria, do you want to? right, that's good. Can everybody see this okay?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the floor plan that Richard was just talking about. Down below, on the lower level is the main gathering space in the teal color, and right behind that is in the reddish is the diner area. In the center of the building itself is the school store, bathrooms, support space, elevator, and in the back is the fine art, the 3D art room, sculpture, and the theater area. The overall building, Mari, you want to go to the upper level?
Yeah.
The overall building itself is a little over 8,000 square feet, and the floor plate is a little bit over 6. This is the second story we're looking at now. In the purple in the top right corner is the fine arts and fine arts studios overlooking the common. You've got an art gallery, which is really just the display of the students' work that they're working on. There's a couple of offices there in the center and a couple of conference rooms in the back corner with some mechanical spaces, elevators in the top left. Okay, would you go to the next, Maria? Thank you. Okay, so these are flattened straight elevations of the building. The top left is what faces south. And that south-facing elevation is really what's overlooking the main quad of the main portion of the campus. It's mostly curtain wall glass, 4 different colors. The idea, the architectural concept being that this is a gathering.
Put it down.
Sorry?
Keep going, Mike. I think that was inadvertent.
Okay.
You guys
There is
sit up. Oh, you can't.
See what? Okay. So this glass facade overlooks the main facade, the main quad of the building, and right below it is the north elevation, and that's mostly a stone. It's a natural field stone facade that faces the highway, faces the north side of the building, and the zoo, the petting zoo, the petting zoo, the farm. The top right is the east elevation, and that's the facade that faces Cops Road. And on the bottom right corner is the west facade, and that's the business end of the building where they'll be bringing screen sets in and out and bringing it back and forth to the carpentry shop and back and forth to the theater itself. This will kind of play out a little bit. You'll understand a little bit more when I show you the 3Ds. So if you move to the next one, Maria. It's taking a second to load here.
Yeah, excuse me, and my cat.
My apologies. So this is while it's loading, it's a 2-story building. It's got an occupancy load of less than 50 on the top story. It's with a single exit from the top floor. There's an outdoor gathering space, which you'll see. Okay, so here's the technical piece from our piece, where the highest peak of the building itself is 31'8". The lowest roof, 23 foot. It's an average of 27, and the allowable height 37'6". So at our highest peak, we are below the allowable. In our building area, you can see the main level is 4,500 square feet. The upper level is 37 for a total of 8,200 square feet. And the footprint is 4,723 square feet. The total occupancy is 125 persons, with the exiting capacity far exceeding that. And the upper level is only about 48 on the top floor. Okay, so if you can move to the next one, Maria.
And then we're gonna move on to renderings.
Correct. We're going to move on to renderings. Tom, when he presents the civil engineering, will present the technical piece of the document.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are 3-dimensional renderings, and you can see how these kind of undulating forms, the architectural idea. We actually went to it was 2 weeks ago. We had the
You guys went to the advisory committee on community appearance.
Difficult name. My apologies. I was going to say the Architectural Review Board, but obviously there was a move to not call it that. We went through there, presented this, and the architectural concept being that being a gathering space, we did a play on the idea of the grove. These undulating roofs are really the idea of being inside of a grove, both in the daytime and night. The windows are about the idea of enclosure, and the colors are the natural colors of the surrounding, and they're meant to represent leaves around the perimeter. You can see how this shines in the nighttime, low level light. However, the idea is that you'll see all the colors at night. Okay. This next view is the view from the west, looking into you're really in the courtyard, looking at the building facing east, looking at the west facade, and this is where the stage sets come in and out of the building. And then if you could load the final one, Maria.
Yep. Sorry, I'm using a VPN and it's making my computer very slow.
And then this is the view from the road. This was from Cops Road, looking at the building. And you can see the final undulating roof, the facade facing north.
Actually, the left-hand side is the part that faces the road. The stone really faces the highway.
And so that's the final elevation. I believe the next thing that we were going to load up was Tom's site plan to review the technical pieces and what he's adding to the site.
Yes. Just a second.
Apologies for the speed of the VPN. There we go.
There.
There we go. Tom, can you hear us?
Yep, gotcha. Can you folks see my cursor, top right, or do I have it? No?
Yes.
You do up here? I'll put it on the new building is moving.
No, no, Tom, that's my cursor.
All right. I cannot share it. Okay. No, well, this is fairly straightforward. For the record, I'm Thomas A. Stevens. I'm a professional engineer and land surveyor. Office here at 141 Durham Road in Madison. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. Back in 2018, we'd come to the commission for permission to put a 1,200 square foot addition on the east end of the building, between the building, what was referred to as the upper school, and the stone house. There were also some archways and drive unders and interconnections between our building and the academic center. That groundbreaking never happened. We came back again this year, and this past June 1st, we received inland wetland approval for the proposal as shown on this plan. And we're here tonight, as Ron mentioned, we're here for a special exception permit and a CAM approval. The existing buildings are sharing a septic system with a third building, the stone house, which is a little building to the right. There's a green line going out the north of the stone house, going across the north of our community center, down into a septic tank, then westerly to a pump pit. Then there's a pressure line, and it's via a 2-inch, well, it's a 4-inch sleeve, but the 2-inch line goes through a sleeve that's already in place. And the septic system, Maria, if you can go, or maybe I can move the, go to the top. Go to the top of the sheet. A little more right there. The green line then comes into a pair of Mantis leaching system lines back behind the baseball field bleachers. While I have got this picture up, I'm going to jump around a little bit. One of the coastal resources as part of our CAM application is freshwater wetlands, and they also talk about flood zones. There is a flood zone immediately adjacent to the game farm pond. It's approximately elevation 17, but it is not within anywhere near the construction we're proposing. So if we go back down to the proposed building, Thank you. And Pam, a little bit to the right there. That's good. In blue to the north of the stone house, we're showing subsurface galleries. That's to catch the increase in roof area of the new building versus the existing building. The existing building is 40 by 100 feet. It's shown in red, and that's going to be expanded northerly 6 feet, and the 100 feet, another approximately 9 feet to the north. And the rest of what you're looking at from a bird's eye view is cantilevered toward Cops Road. There'll be a gathering area, which will be pervious pavers. There'll be a catch basin here to take roof water and surface water and route it through the subsurface storm sewer system. The reconstruction of these two septic systems to go up to the baseball field takes the stress off the existing system, which is also shared by the academic building. So this is sized for the use that Michael described, including the kitchen, which is for like a home ec type thing. So we have factored in meals being served and that type of thing. I should talk about the CAN just because I'm here. The coastal resources are general resources, freshwater wetlands, and shorelands. Shorelands are any lands that are not subject to flooding or outside of flood zone. And we have no issues that would affect the wetlands or the shorelands. It's just a disturbance of the footprint as shown. We have no comments. I think the last time we had comments from the state was our application 2 years ago, and their issue was rainwater. I think they suggested rain barrels. Well, we've opted for something subsurface just because it's less unsightly. Unless there's questions or unless there's, it's not shown here. I've got a plan I may or may not be able to call up, but we've opted for like honeycomb pavers here where the bituminous driveway exists, and that honeycomb would extend around behind to where the theater props are coming out to kind of armor it. That tank, the old tank, will be removed. So from a point of view of looking at things, this will all appear to be grass. The fire marshal is on board with it because it will support the fire engine. So I'm going to see if I can share a screen here. If I get in trouble, Mario, save me. We'll go back to this drawing. I can maybe.
Well, we do have the landscape drawing we could load up also, Tom.
Okay, share. There we go. I'm 1 for 100 now. This is good. I told John Cunningham I was going to run over to his office next time I was there. A lot funnier tonight than a month ago. This is the area I described as being the honeycomb, and this will all appear as lawn. And this will bituminous, this will be bituminous, this will be bituminous. The building will be served by the existing water and gas and existing utilities on site. I think that's it. I'll still be here. We come back around again. I think John Cunningham, I was going to hand off to you. John Cunningham, do you want to grab the petard?
I'm here. Maria, if you could slide down to the landscape plan, that would be terrific.
Yeah. Tom, could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yep. Maybe. Let's see. Well, all I have to do, I've got share up top here. Should I get rid of that? Go down with it.
There we go.
What do I do? I can't.
That's fine, Maria, if you leave it right there, okay?
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time. John Cunningham, owner of TEC Landscape Design Incorporated in Madison, Connecticut. Let me just stay on the grass cell installation that Tom was just talking about. So you can see on my plan that we are removing the asphalt. we're using really a commercial grass cell that will support the weight of the fire trucks. The one other thing that I'll bring in that we are probably going to change some of the concrete, the poured in place concrete walkways to blend to this new community center. We haven't decided on all the placement of that yet. It's all going to be in-ground materials. So there might be a little change on the walkways coming to the community center. From a landscape point of view, the community center from the quad really doesn't want any plant material in front of it. I showed a low green ground cover bed that might or might not be in. It might just be lawn, okay? If it is a ground cover, it's gonna be a creeping liriope that's only 6 inches tall, but there's no other plant material in front of the building. The majority of the landscape plan for this project was really the wetland renovation of both the farm and the removal of the invasive species out back, which we have approval for. So we've left the farm. I made a note that the final placement of the concrete pad behind the building would be shown on Tom Stevens' plan. Our fencing with a wire mesh on it will run around that pad and lead over to a new entrance to the farm. The one bit of planting we are going to do, we have a very low evergreen hedge that's going to soften the base of the seating area for the outdoor area. I also suggested some multi-stemmed sweet bay magnolia, which is a native magnolia to the area. And some, Richard likes to use some different colors, so it's probably going to be more of a perennial ground cover garden that's behind that seating area that you would see from Cops Road and from the quad to the building. But a very simple plan. Once again, the majority of the work is really cleaning up the wetland area that runs directly behind the building. You can see all my notes on it. So we're eliminating all the invasives and we're replanting a fairly extensive plant list on those areas also. Any questions from the board?
Any questions for John or any of the presenters?
Yeah, this is Jim Madison. Could Maria show the Cops Road elevation, not the elevation, the Cops Road rendering? The Cops
Yes.
Road view rendering?
No, that's the highway. This is the,
That's the front.
The back.
So, yeah, so there's really two, as you, right. The other one, the previous one. This one right here is if you're on Cops Road North heading south, you'll see this is almost the view from the farm. And then if you come on the other angle, is the view from Cops Road heading north.
yes, you'll see the.
Yeah, you'll see this from heading south.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was this the one you wanted to see, sir?
I think so. If this is what we'll see from Cops Road.
You know, you'll see this if we're going north on Cops Road. More the colorful part of it will be the part that I think pops out more. The stone part is more parallel to the highway, but you will see it when you drive past, certainly when you drive past the building.
Right. Okay, Richard. So if we look at that left portion of that rendering, that's kind of what we'll see directly facing Cops, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right, good.
I can pull up the elevations real quick, just to give you an idea of what exactly that side will look like.
But the stone house is still between this building and the road.
Yes.
That's right.
Correct.
You'll see that view, but the stone house will be there as well.
That's right. So I'm not having to do it. Not a bit.
Okay, good. That answers the question. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? This is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who are interested in this application and would like to ask at this point a question of the applicant about any of the information they presented?
So if there are members of the public that wish to ask a question on this application, you can raise your hand and I'll have the ability to unmute you and allow you to talk. So we have 21 attendees on the meeting now. As of yet, I'm not seeing anyone raise their hand.
No questions?
No questions.
Okay, then let me follow up with the members of the public. Is there any member of the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application for Grove School? Please raise your hand and speak.
Nope, no takers.
Okay, and the reverse, are there any members of the public who are in opposition to this application? Please raise your hand.
Nope, no
No.
hands, Ron.
Okay. We've covered the fact that ACA has reviews this date, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna stop sharing so we can see the other commission members. Yeah, ACA reviewed this and enthusiastically, very enthusiastically, in fact, endorsed the application. They were very pleased with what they saw. And the chairwoman especially, said that multiple times. And then the application also went before the Inland Wetlands Agency as a regulated activity permit, and that was approved as well.
Okay. So let me see, are there any questions now that the commission may have for the applicant? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion if anybody would care to make one.
And Ron, if I could just remind the commission, there's two components to the application. One is the special exception application, and the other is the coastal site plan. So there
Right.
should be motion separately, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, let's do the site application itself first, then we'll follow up with the site plan. So I mean, the application for the project that's within our domain.
So Ron, this is Jim Madison. I move that we accept the application.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
I think the town's accepted it. I think we think we're going to approve it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Jim, you want to modify your motion to that effect, motion for approval?
Yes, I think I'll do that.
right.
I'd like to see, I jumped ahead, Joel. That's what happened. Yeah, I'll make the motion that we approve the application.
Okay.
Is that right?
I'll second again.
That we accept it, yeah. There we go. We accept the application.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Congratulations, you have a very nice building entering your campus by the looks of things.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then
Thank
just so we
you.
don't forget, Ron, the other component is the coastal site plan, and the commission needs to find it consistent with the goals and policies of the Coastal Management Act.
Would anybody care to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
That was
Joel, I believe.
Joel.
Joel.
Second by
Second by John Mathers.
John Mathers. Any discussion on the coastal site plan? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? None. Congratulations a second time.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is application 20.0. Application 20.0. Whoever's phone ringing, maybe?
I got it.
Okay. Application 20-08, 503 Old Pole Road, map 143, lot 20, in the RU1 district. The owner is the Madison Investment Group, LLC. The applicant is Wildwood Behavioral Health, LLC. It's a special exception permit to utilize existing building, to provide professional outpatient behavioral health services for adults. The facility will be licensed by the Connecticut Department of Health. Could somebody mute who's ever making noise? Appreciate that. Licensed by the state Connecticut Department of Health to provide outpatient programming, including individual, group, family, and activity therapies for individuals with low to moderate severity psychiatric, including substance abuse disorders, requiring non-hospital, non-medically managed treatment. Treatment services will not include methadone maintenance. And this is, although it's a public hearing, we closed the public hearing at our last meeting. So we will no longer, in fact, we're not allowed be asking questions of the applicant, and they cannot ask anything from us, nor can the public participate. It's the commission itself. And we can, of course, communicate with Dave, and in this case, Ira Bloom. The one thing I want to touch on, though, is Ron Bodenson, you will continue to sit, of course, for Brian Richardson. And Joe Banofsky is not with us this evening. And since we're in deliberations, two things. Number one, Peter Roos has sat through all of we're now into our third meeting with this topic, but he's indicated to me previously, and I assume that would hold true. Peter, you'd recuse yourself, correct, from participation?
That is correct, Ron.
Okay. And Dr. Hay has not been at all a part of this, and I think it would be unfair to her, as well as the applicant and the neighbors, to expect her to, it wouldn't be the right thing to do to have her participate. So we will be sitting tonight with 8 commissioners in deliberation, and we'll see where it leads from there. Dave, do you have anything you want to say or start us off?
No, I think based on the initial deliberations from the commission during the last meeting, there was a suggestion that we invite the town attorney to give us a bit of guidance on this application. So I reached out to Ira via email and provided him the application materials, the minutes, and the videos. I know he's had an opportunity to look through those largely. I didn't ask him to watch every minute of the video, which was, I think, probably 6 hours in total. But I know that, he and I spoke, and he has a very good understanding of this specific application. And so, I think with your permission, Ron, I was going to allow Ira to maybe give a little bit of an introduction of, how he views we should contemplate the application. And then, we can just start some deliberations among the commission, and both Ira and myself will be available for questions or any input that you think is necessary.
That certainly makes me. What do the other commissioners think? Sound like a good idea? Thumbs?
Yep.
Fine,
Sure.
thanks, Dave.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
So Ira, if you're ready, we're ready for you.
I'm ready. Can you all, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying good evening. Good evening, Ron and members of the commission. It's nice to see some of you again, and maybe a few for the first time. Just to elaborate on some background for a couple of seconds. Our firm has been town attorney for Madison for, I think, maybe close to 10 years or so. My partner Floyd Dugas does a lot of the work, and I try to help with the land use. And I just haven't been down your way, I guess, for P&Z meetings for some time. And you may have met my colleague Peter Gelderman from time to time the past year or so. And so in any event, I'm glad to be invited back here, even if it is not in person, but it's through a Zoom meeting. So what I've done, just so you understand, obviously I was not at the public hearing portion of this, but Dave did provide me with some written materials, and I've had a chance to look at the materials that he gave me. I've had a chance to look at least at one of the meetings, the second one actually. I didn't get a chance to go through the first public hearing session. So I think I have a fairly good idea of where you are, but it is difficult to kind of stop in like this as a town attorney, and after having missed the other sessions. But we'll give it a shot. I guess what I'm going to try to do is give you some sort of framework for perhaps how you should look at this application. I cannot tell you what to do. Obviously, that is not up to me. You have to review all the materials in the record, the written materials, the testimony, everything that's been presented to you, and you have to make certain factual findings and then reach a conclusion on this application based upon the regulations and the law and the information in the record. So the starting point, which you know, I believe, is Section 5 of the regulations, and that deals with rural districts. And you know that there are certain uses which are permitted as of right in 5.2, but we're talking about uses permitted by special exception, and that's Section 5.4. And there are a list of, I think it's 8 categories, A through H. Those are the permitted uses, but they do require a special exception. Many of these categories of these 8 special uses have setback or other qualifying standards which also apply. So I guess what I want to emphasize is that to approve this application, to approve any special exception application, you need to make a finding first that the proposed use fits into one of these categories. That's kind of that's the fundamental decision you will make. Does this application fit into one of these categories? And then once if you determine that, then you have the more general special exception categories: health, safety, welfare. That includes a look at traffic and impact on the neighborhood, et cetera. Those are the more general special exception categories. So first you have to find a category. Does it fit into one of these A through H? And then if it does, you go on to the more general criteria in the special exception regulations. If you determine that it does not fit into any of these A through H, then you cannot approve this application. You couldn't approve any special exception application if it doesn't fit into one of these categories, if it's something that's not allowed. Only these things are allowed. So I understand from the testimony that it's really come down, in terms of these 8 categories, it's really come down to a discussion basically of two of the categories. And the first consideration is whether or not it fits under Section D. And that, as you know, reads banks, professional, and other offices. Or there's been discussion of whether it fits under G, a private hospital, sanatorium, or clinic. The problem with G is that even if you do determine that this is a clinic, it's within the setback. I think that's a given, as I understand it from Dave. So G is really out of the picture for this application, because even if it does fit under clinic, it's not allowed because of that 100 feet setback requirement. So you're really back to essentially trying to determine whether this fits into an office under 5.4D. And I think that is the basic question that you have to examine, whether it fits under that category. You can debate, and I know you have debated, whether it's a clinic or not a clinic, but to some degree, that doesn't matter, because even if it is a clinic, it can't be passed. This application can't be passed because it doesn't satisfy the balance of that regulation due to the 100 feet. I also understand, and Dave, you can confirm this yet one more time with me, that the applicant says that they do comply under D, that this is an office. And I believe that they have also represented that even more specifically, if you go to the definitions in the regulations, that this constitutes a medical office. Is that right, Dave?
That's correct.
confirm that.
That is correct.
So that definition is in your regulations. You've seen that, I'm sure. And you can discuss that to see whether it fits under that category or not. That is going to be completely your judgment. Again, based upon the regulations and the evidence in the record. And you'll have to make that determination. And if you do, then you go on to the more general categories. If you decide it's not an office, then there really, I think, is no other category that this would be for the reasons that I said before. So that's one point. You need to make, just to sum it up, you need to make that affirmative finding to pass this application, that it fits as an office, and more specifically pursuant to the applicant's position, a medical office. Okay. So how do you decide this? And what do you look at? You have a body of evidence in the record. You have reports, you have the application, you have reports, you have testimony. You also have the certificate of need. I do want to say this, that has been presented to you and that is in the record. And I think you should consider that. You have to decide how much weight to give it, whether to give it any weight or considerable weight. That will be your call, but it is there before you. And unless the applicant has somehow stated that it doesn't apply, or it's not accurate, or it's been changed or something like that, then you have that evidence before you and the description of the activity in the certificate of need. But you need to decide how much weight to give that compared to the statement of use in the application submitted and the other testimony presented by the applicant. But it is there as part of the record, and it's something that you need to consider and decide how impactful it is and what weight to give it. So I may want to stop at this point. I think I will stop at this point, and I can obviously answer your questions as we go along, but I want to make those so basic points about what you'll have to do in order to pass it. Pass it with conditions is an option because reasonable conditions are allowed in this special exception situation. So you can pass an application and impose reasonable conditions. That certainly is an option you have before you. But again, you will have to fit it into one of the categories, and the one that's available is the medical office. So I think I'll stop at this point, and then I can answer your questions as we see how this goes.
Okay. Anyone with a question for Ira? Ira, I'll ask you one. Go ahead, John. I'll defer to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Ira. So if memory serves, one of the sticking points that we were struggling with is whether or not this is a clinic. And the applicant, in order to operate this facility, needed to apply for a license with the state. And I believe the license is an outpatient psychiatric clinic. So having to apply for that license, does that in fact define this as a clinic?
Well, the commission will have to answer that question, not me. You know, you have to take that application and the description of the activities, the application being applied for. I gather there were discussions during the hearings about what is a clinic and how people look at clinics nowadays. You'll have to put that together and make that determination. I mean, I think that really gets to the heart of your decision.
The applicant argues that he's not running a clinic, and he's willing to be subjected to conditions that prevent him from operating a quote-unquote clinic. But the attorney for the neighbors made a point about the license required is a license for a clinic or a license for a psychiatric outpatient clinic. So I guess in my mind, does that license define it as a clinic, whether or not the applicant calls it one? You know, is a rose by any other name still a rose, I suppose?
That's an important question, but I can't answer it in my position.
Okay.
John, maybe I'll jump in here because I didn't obviously participate in the deliberations, but I was here and listening very closely. And I think one of the things the commission discussed is they looked at our definition of outpatient clinic, medical, which was written very specifically as a kind of walk-in clinic, you know, if you needed immediate medical attention. And I was thinking through that a little bit, and I did a little bit of research. If you guys could excuse me 1 second, I just need to say goodnight to my daughter.
I think we should all say goodnight to your daughter. Good night, darling.
Thank you very much. So I did a little bit of research in our files, and I took a copy of the 1970 Town of Madison Planning and Zoning Regulations. So that section 5.4, I believe it's G, was actually included in that 1970 regulation. So hospitals, sanatoriums, or clinics. So that was a special use also back in 1970 in the rural district. And if you go through the definition section of this book, it does not include the word clinic under the definition. So, you know, at the time that regulation was written, I think the commission would need to look towards the common definition of clinic to try to decide really what the intent of that regulation was. The actual term outpatient clinic, medical wasn't introduced in the regulations until 2010. So in 2010, that definition was introduced into the regulations. And if you look at section 6 and the commercial district has a use category that's specifically defined as outpatient clinic, medical. And I think that's an important distinction because in my opinion that Ira's emphasized it's not necessarily a binary decision. You don't have to define it as a clinic, but I think that's the two categories that folks were kind of wrestling between. And because the definition in our current regulations of outpatient clinic, medical leans towards a walk-in clinic, I think folks disregarded that category, or some folks disregarded that category because of that. So I'm just introducing the fact that that particular definition didn't exist back in 1970 when this regulation was on the books. So I believe that the common definition of clinic could also be looked at and weighed, in relation, John, to your question about what the state licensing calls it as well. So, but I just thought that the little bit of history maybe would be a little informative to the commission, so I wanted to share that.
Thank you, Dave. And just anecdotally, that 2010 change was predicated for the commercial district, was predicated to be able to accommodate that walk-in medical center next to Stop and Shop, which is now Middlesex. It was another outfit at the time, but that's why that was included in the commercial district to allow them to use that site or that building. Any other questions for Ira at the moment? I'll pick up on one. It was actually raised by Jim Madison, Ira, when we were in deliberations 2 weeks ago. How do we evaluate public input in applications like this? It's a kind of an objective standard looking to define. It's not terribly subjective like some other topics, but how should we evaluate or use that in our deliberations?
Well, every application involves public input, and obviously you need to listen to them and take it into account and consider it. And sometimes people have factual statements that help make a decision. I didn't review that part of it myself because I didn't watch the first proceeding. But sometimes people offer important factual things, and otherwise they give you various opinions. So you have to take public comment into account. This is not a referendum though, so it's not guided necessarily by the number of people on one side or the other. But in the real world, that does play a factor also. And I don't know exactly what people said. Sometimes people have certain expertise that they offer, and that becomes helpful. But basically, ultimately, the commission has to evaluate everything in the record, including public comments. And if there's certain technical issues that require expertise, you would generally rely upon expert testimony, as opposed to anecdotal comments. So on those kinds of issues, you would typically rely upon experts. But public comments have to be taken into account.
Thank you. Jim, did I ask that question for you? Did I steal your thunder? I think you're muted, Jim. You still are.
There we go.
There we go.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Ron. It did.
Okay.
It did.
Any other for Ira? Dave, do you have anything you want to comment on with regards to our questions or a question you may have?
I don't have any additional comment. I introduced kind of some of the thoughts I was having, but I'm happy to entertain, questions or continue that conversation.
Yeah, I'm happy to sit here and listen if things come up, or if you think you're through with me, I'll go, whichever you want. But if I am leaving again, I just want to emphasize again that to approve the application, which is entirely your decision, you do have to make a finding initially that this is a permitted use. And I think more specifically, you would have to find that this is an office use or medical use. So that's a kind of a threshold question here. And then you have the other general considerations. But that's the one category that, in order to approve it tonight, you'd have to make that finding. And I'm not suggesting one way or the other. You can do it. You can add conditions, or you can decide, no, it's not a medical office. That's going to be your call. You can have the discussion about clinic, and is it a clinic under the definition in the regs, or is it a more general clinic? And what is a clinic? You can have that discussion, but I guess I'm suggesting to you that you don't necessarily have to conclude that line of inquiry, but you do have to conclude whether this to approve this application, that it does fit within 5.4D.
Okay. Well, of course, part of the reason you're here, Ira, is this is a controversial application. And, don't know what's in store, but there could possibly be an appeal by one side or the other. So would it be okay if you stayed on the call as we discuss it and kind of not help us with the deliberations, but if you happen to see something that we're going off the tracks with or heading in the wrong direction, just kind of bring it to our attention, because again, we want to make the right decision, but we also want to make it and frame it properly to everyone's benefit. So does that make sense to you, Ira?
Yeah,
Dave?
yeah, and I'm happy to do that. And so let me also add, this is something that Dave and I spoke about earlier today. Whatever you do, I would suggest that you not take a final vote tonight. Rather, that you, if you're able to, hopefully you are, at the end of tonight's session, you'll have some consensus one way or the other, and then ask Dave to prepare a draft resolution one way or the other, so that he can do that carefully. I'm happy to help him lay out evidence in the record supporting whatever decision is made here, and that we come back to you afterwards, have you look at that and then vote on the, approved final language. And the reason I say that is because I do understand that there could very well be an appeal by one side or the other that's not happy with your decision. And so if it goes to court, it's always very helpful to have a written resolution of approval with conditions, or denial that articulates your reasoning carefully and cites the evidence and cites the regulations. And that is a better approach to any court appeal.
Now I'll ask a question of our town attorney. As chairman, does that mean we should or should not conduct a straw vote?
Well, you can do a straw vote, so Dave knows sort of where you are, what to prepare. If you're able to do that.
Right.
If people feel, all right, they've made up their mind, and you can say, all right, let me get a consensus here, and if the vote is one way or the other, then you would ask Dave to prepare a resolution, which you'll take up at the next available meeting, and then review it in the public forum and presumably vote that night.
Okay. Thank you for that help. All right. Any other questions that arose? So taking into account what we felt and what we may feel now that Ira's spoken to us and given us his guidance, what are your thoughts? Anybody want to volunteer? Okay, Jim, how about you?
I'm not convinced that it is not a clinic. I believe it is. Just hearing the testimony of what activities would go on there, I view this more as a clinic. And again, it's a gray area, but two things. One is I don't see it as a traditional office, like a dentist office. And I also, still going back to John's question, the application it is an application for a clinic. So having said that, I would say that we couldn't move forward anyway, because it does not come under D, it comes under G. Secondly, if the rest of the organization felt that it was not a clinic and therefore was a permitted use, I would then fall back to the second area of consideration, which is the impact on the neighborhood. And having heard from the abutters, the residents behind this facility, the overwhelming resistance about having this here. Also, they did present some evidence that this type of facility has the history in some cases of lowering property values by some amount. Again, that was some of their concerns. So if we did get by the first one, which I'm not in agreement that we should, I would then come back to the second area of consideration and not be in favor of it. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Elliot,
I'm pretty much in agreement with Jim. I'm having a real difficult time seeing this as anything but a clinic. And with what Dave brought up, with what the original regulations that were written in 1970 didn't have an actual definition of a clinic. It just specified clinic as in that section G. I don't think I would be able to be in favor of the application.
thank you. Joel? Joel Miller? I don't know whether he's seems frozen photo in the screen. Joel?
How's that?
Here you go.
Can
Yep.
All right. It's saying just push the space bar and you unmute yourself for a second. That doesn't work. So anyway, I look, based on all of the information that the applicant provided in its application relative to our zoning regulations, I'm actually not convinced that it isn't an office based on the uses that are stated in there, and also based on our ability to box in the use, by condition to the special exception, with restricting it to the uses that are stated in the application. So I am not convinced that it doesn't fit the office definition, or we could put it into the office definition based on the restrictions that we could put on it as a condition.
Thank you. Giselle?
Yeah, I'm in favor of what Jim, I'm kind of going along with Jim explained, and Elliot. It's unfortunate because these are great services that Dr. Hinckley and his group wants to provide. But I'm just going based on the fact that the whole clinic, I just can't wrap my head around that. Applying for a licensed clinic, it's not an approved use. I'm not in favor.
Okay, thank you. Tom Berland?
Thanks, Ron. I fall into the category of Joel. This, in every way I think about a professional office, this appears to be a professional office, both on the type of services that they're providing and what they described would be going on there. So it doesn't fit into what I would consider a clinic. And, they've described the specific things that they're not providing. I understand and hear the neighbors' concerns, and I think that we can go a long way to addressing those concerns with fairly tight constrictions in terms of what activities can go on there or can't go on there, and pretty much following along the line of what's been described as their use. So I think we can define it. I do understand the need to be cognizant of the neighbors' concerns, but I also think we in planning and zoning do need to think about the greater good that can occur from a service that's being offered in what to me looks like a professional services organization. These services are critical need of critical need in all of our communities, and in Madison as well. So I think finding it as an office allows it to be, which I believe it is, fits within the allowable uses, and putting the restrictions on what happens there could allay the neighbors' fears.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I find myself more aligned with Tom and Joel on this matter. The reason I asked the question about the license of the clinic is if that license defined this as a clinic, then I think it's case closed. It doesn't meet our falls under G, which is not allowable. But this sounds to me much more like a professional office, and I'm basing that on what Dr. Hinckley's application states and what he states. And I don't think that he did a great job of presenting himself. However, after listening for quite an extended period of time, over 2 meetings of him answering questions and so forth, it sounds to me like it's a professional office where people are going for professional medical services. And I think, like Tom, I think that we could put conditions in that would alleviate the bulk of the neighbor concerns. And the neighbors have very valid concerns. But, in terms of the use of this property, I think that the application falls under 5.4D, and that's a permissible use. So I think it would be my opinion that we move forward with that and Dave draft conditions to address the neighbors' concerns. And I also feel that Dr. Hinckley was willing to have those conditions imposed upon him, which helps me to helps validate his position in my mind.
Thank you, John. I guess I'm the last person standing.
Ron Bodenson as well.
Oh, excuse me, Ron. Ron's I get confused about. I'll go with alphabetical. Ron B.
I'm confusing. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can.
Well, I agree with the last couple of speakers. I just think that we're getting hung up on the word clinic. That's a label at the state agency, and also a label from which was entered into like 1970. And it turns out our zoning book on clinic was 1970. And just imagine all the changes that have happened in the last 50 years. How many times have we dealt with the IRS or the town about the label given to our motor vehicle, or going to get married, which label exists or doesn't exist now, but it exists later. We're always working around past labels. And I think one observation in the law is you can have a big document that says agreement, but the substance of the document is a big disagreement. It's really a disagreement. So I just think we have to look at the substance of it and not get hung up on 1970s labels that the state forced him into using to make an application. And given that, the best I can tell from all of his information is he's moving one medical office to another medical office. And it exactly fits the definition of medical office in our zoning code. So once you get there, we have other issues. Do you overcome that because of neighborhood outcry? If are there conditions to put on it? That's another issue. But I think this sounds like it may be coming down to the label clinic versus medical office, and I weigh in the favor of medical office.
Thank you, Ron. Now we'll go to Ron C. First off, I understand where Tom Berlin is coming from. These type of services are important, indeed. But they don't have to be important at this location. They can be important anywhere in town. Uh, So I don't see why there's anything that, gets, I don't want to lose sight of that fact. However, if we were to take the statement of need, and that was included in the application as the wording they used to submit it, it is a clinic. No matter how you slice it or dice it, or what the town or what the state calls it, you look at look up the definition of the word clinic, and there's a picture of that statement of need. And in my mind, it is not an office. It's a clinic. Walks like a duck, talks like a duck, and by all definition, I agree with Jim and a couple of the others that clinic by far falls into that category. Office is a stretch, and that's part of the reason that I believe the application was worded so nebulous and so carefully to not underscore, to de-highlight what there. In fact, I don't believe the applicant submitted the certificate of need. It was the neighbor's attorney. So maybe it's a little wordsmithing, but I think it falls far on the side of clinic than even close to an office or a medical office. So those are my feelings about it. And it seems like, if my math is correct, we're at about a 4-4. Is that what you get, Dave?
That's correct.
So hello, Ira.
Why am I not shocked you're going to call on me, Ron?
Well, the other issue is there's a commissioner who is not here tonight who sat in through it. We could take a straw poll, and I think we know what the result would be. But then what our next step be? Do we include or not include who has not been part of this conversation, has not heard your presentation and your guidance?
Well, I mean, I guess that's up to you. This is a regular member who attended the 2 public hearings, but just couldn't make it tonight.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that's up to you.
Yeah, I guess I would give a little bit of input into that, Ron, is that might be a tough position to put that commissioner in.
I agree.
Putting him at the,
Why is that?
well, because I guess what I'm saying is they would end up being the decision maker, it seems. You're putting him in that position.
So we're all decision makers in every debate that we're in. And we have always had a practice of, if you miss a meeting and you watch the tapes, you can participate in the ongoing meeting. So I don't see this case as any different.
Yeah, that's fine. He will feel that it's difficult. I agree with what you're saying, Tom. It's just.
So look, let me just say.
The thing is, what happens if you can't make the next meeting or John can't make it, and so the outcome changes every meeting.
It's the same thing that happens with any debate that we've had, historically.
Maybe when you pose it to him, don't let him know that he's the final deal maker or deal breaker or whatever.
Well, I shouldn't have jumped in. Maybe I should have let Ira talk.
Well, I mean, it's it's a bit of a dilemma, candidly. I mean, it's scheduled for a certain night, and if any member, I don't even know who the gentleman is. So you realize I have no idea who it is or what he might be thinking or how he might vote. So you could take the position. I'll give you 2 alternatives. You could say, look, we scheduled for tonight, and this gentleman couldn't make it for whatever reason. That's how that happens. And you've now spent, 45 minutes or more debating this and giving your opinions, and you all heard each other. And it's 4-4. which would not pass the application. This last person has not had the benefit of that discussion. So they could come back. On the other hand, they could listen to this tape. You could come back another night. And the person will have listened to the tape. I would recommend if you do that, that you have a discussion again on a subsequent night. It is possible that somebody here tonight will change their view, having thought about it. It's possible. I wouldn't suggest you just come back in 2 weeks and go right to a vote. I think you have to go through this discussion again. Maybe have me repeat some things or answer his questions, and you could do it that way if you want to do it that way. It really depends. It's going to be your call.
And Ron, just so you know, I wasn't taking the position that we should delay it just so that we had an odd number of people in the room. If the decision is we're at an impasse and the right thing to do is to vote on it, then we vote on it. We certainly have enough input. And I think the only thing we said is if we thought we had to we were going to pass this, to not vote on it, right?
Can I throw something in? This is Ron Bodenson. I thought the whole meeting started with David and Attorney Bloom saying, don't vote on this tonight. Give him time to come up with a nice draft, conditions, and come back and vote in 2 weeks. I don't understand why that has changed simply because we've done a straw vote. In fact, a straw vote was encouraged knowing we weren't going to vote tonight. But that was my observation.
I don't think anybody's even suggested a change. We want to make sure we do, but your point is well taken, but that isn't it's a discussion about the impact.
Yeah, I guess what I need is a clear direction as to what resolution I'm drafting. That's what I need,
I would, Ron, I would offer just, sorry, I would just say, I still believe that you're going to need a written resolution. If it's 4-4, the application does not pass. But I think that should be stated in a resolution, and my recommendation would be that some of the reasons discussed tonight be incorporated into the resolution, so there is something to explain if there's an appeal later on. So I don't suggest you just vote and go home tonight without anything in writing or any explanation. If there is an appeal, it's better to have some articulation of what the reasoning was. And in this case, there was not a majority that voted in favor of granting the application as an office use as it stands today. That would, however, I think you have to decide whether this last gentleman is going to come back or not at the last meeting, or if he will just sit that out too, on the theory that he missed the discussion, he missed the straw vote, and he's not going to come back for the next vote. If you want him to come back, then I would not bother with that exercise at all. If you want him to come back and vote, in other words, then we could probably just finish things up for the night and say, you'll deliberate again in X weeks, and the other gentleman will come back and we'll go through this. We'll deliberate again. And then you'll take that vote, and then Dave will have to prepare that resolution, whatever it is.
Well, we certainly won't have a resolution tonight, in terms of if we're going to go with the straw vote idea. And as I was saying, I want to make sure we do the right thing, proper thing, and the responsible and legal thing. My concern is that this one individual who doesn't live too far from this area, is, what that might, there are a lot of people.
Irrelevant. Not a single one of us, can think about what the other member is going to think or say because of where he lives. I would suggest we stop that line of talk.
Well,
I would second that.
Thank you, but I would like to finish my point, if you don't mind. Concern would be that, he may be be bombarded with some telephone calls and pressure be put on him unfairly just because he's not here tonight. They know he's the swing vote. And it's a tough position to be in. And that is my point. And I would hope that anybody from the public, I'm sure there's some folks that live up that way are with us tonight, that the record is closed and we should not be talking, we don't talk to anyone about these applications outside of these meetings. But the thought occurred to me about, that occurring and tough position to be in. But, then I'll defer back to what Joel and Tom were trying to say. But I'd hate to see pressure put on this individual over the next 2 weeks, trying to influence his thoughts. So how he, how he responds, or, in the extreme, he's harassed enough where he feels like he's better off to abstain, then we're nowhere, we're nowhere either. So I'm just trying to think the whole thing through and be fair, as I said, and do it properly. Not to hedge on it or to say that, right, as Tom said earlier, it's what we're here for to do is vote. But the 2-week delay could be problematic, and I hope it isn't.
Ron, this is Jim.
Yes.
Okay, so you had asked me to make my comments first, which I did. And I said 2 things. One is I didn't know where this was going to go on the discussion of clinic versus non-clinic. And it appears that is 4-4. But what I said was, if the commission says it appears that this is a authorized, a permitted use, then the second part was what Ira had said regarding some other considerations that we need to consider, take into consideration for approving it, even if it was a permitted use, since it is a special exception. And that really had to do with, one of the things was the impact of the neighbors. So I just wanted to make that point. I wanted to go back to something Tom had said and John, and I believe that this absolutely is a service that will benefit the community. I just believe that it's best done in a commercial zone, and not because we have such gray area and we have such an outcry from the neighborhood. So anyway, just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else?
One of the suggestions I would make is not knowing what the composition of the next meeting is going to be, who's going to be there, who's not going to be there, and how people are going to change their mind or not change their mind over the next 2 weeks. Why wouldn't we have 2 resolutions proposed? One that supports and justifies a turn down, if you will, or a non-approval, and one that would put forth conditions that we feel the neighbors brought up that they're concerned about, that we can mitigate with an approval. And that way, in the next meeting, we have 2 options that we can close the book on this and really give the neighbors closure, give the doctor closure, and do the right thing there.
Let me just, I'm sorry, I didn't catch who was speaking there, but I do want to say that may be a way to deal with this impasse tonight. Because very, fairly often, the planner is asked to prepare a resolution of approval with appropriate recommended conditions and a resolution of denial, and present both to the commission. And then you could look at it and you might be persuaded one way or the other, and maybe you'll even change your mind, or you'll see that the approval with conditions looks reasonable, or you'll see that the denial seems persuasive, and you'll have hopefully a full complement of members, all 9 the next time around. So that does require a lot of work by Dave, and I'm happy to work with him. But that's another way to handle this. So that is a good thought.
I'm not
In
opposed
my
to
thought-
whatever work is required, if that's what the commission wants to do. I'm not opposed to that.
And Dave and Ron, I think the condition or the description of the denial is actually relatively straightforward. And it's as simple as, number one, that there's a finding that it is a clinic, and that
I don't think that's correct, Tom. We don't have to make a finding that it is a clinic if we deny it. You have to make a
Well,
finding that it's not an office.
it's not an acceptable use, right?
Right.
But I think, to Attorney Bloom's point, it's probably helpful, depending on if there's an appeal, to really put the reasons why you came to that conclusion. And I think the conclusion was arrived at by 4 members, that because, number one, because they view it as a clinic, it falls into G, and it doesn't reach the setback, so it's not an allowable use. And then second, adverse effect on neighbors. So those are 2 things that are relatively clean for you, right?
Does that make sense to you, Dave?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And then I think, I think we could maybe talk through what do we think the neighbors' concerns were, and what do you think the resolutions are that might be able to mitigate those concerns. And I've got a list of 4 that I'd be happy to propose if you want me to.
Okay, well, that's, something you could transmit to Dave. I think if that's the direction, it seems that, let me take a straw vote. Does everybody think this makes sense? Go about it this way? Hello? Raise your hand or,
I see heads nodding.
okay. What I would suggest then, Dave, is that we go ahead and do that. But in the nearer term, transmit drafts of for the approval side of the conditions, because there are a lot of things that we talked about. Tom already has 4, but there may be some things that the other members occur to them and they would like to weave into it, and to be able to.
If I could,
If we
I
could,
would
if
benefit
we-
from some discussion on that this evening.
Yeah, that's what my thought was too, because I probably missed some things or didn't weigh an importance on something. So it might be beneficial to get everybody thinking, to just put some things on the table, if
I'd
that's
also
okay.
just quickly, Tom, if I could, I'd also suggest that the folks that are leaning in the other direction should also heavily participate in this discussion, because if the application does swing in the favor, you'll also want to make sure that you're comfortable with any conditions of approval that are arrived at.
Good, excellent point. Excellent point.
And let me just ask Dave, do you have enough, Dave, if you're doing a draft of an approval, the conditions, you'll take a stab at based on what you heard tonight. But the basic approval will have to conclude that this is a permitted use i.e. It is an office under 5.4D.
D. Yeah.
I'm sorry, D, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. So you'll have to state that, and we'll have to explain it. In the office, and there is a definition of medical office, so I'll have to utilize that. So I just want to make sure you've heard enough to try to put this together in the best possible light.
Yeah, that part of it, but I think the continued discussion on possible conditions would be helpful for me.
Okay.
Okay.
So I could start if you want,
I don't think,
or if anybody else wants to.
I don't think, Dave or Ira, correct me if I'm wrong. Dave, why don't you submit those to Dave directly? I don't think they have to be discussed tonight. They can be discussed in 2 weeks. But Dave, we're going to see a draft or some information at a time, which would include those. We've got some items here on the agenda to take care of. So
Yeah, I think you can submit thoughts, ideas to Dave. Please be careful not to do anything more than just sending him those thoughts, which he will then incorporate, and then all of that will be discussed publicly at the next meeting, as opposed to any, back and forth, obviously.
Yeah, so can I clarify that? Because I want to make sure that I'm proceeding properly. The communication should be one way to me, and then I prepare a draft based on all those communications, and then that communication is discussed for the first time at the next meeting. I don't know that I want to be doing any back and forth with it.
No, I don't think you should have a back and forth. I think, send ideas with an email only, no discussion, no back and forth. I would prefer even with Dave, so we don't have a freedom of information issue here. And then he can incorporate really everything that he's heard.
yeah, no copies.
That's what I would do.
No copies to other commission members or the chairman, just between you and Dave with your.
Well, yeah, I mean, a day or two before the meeting, you can submit it, so people have a chance to look at it before the next meeting. But that's all I would do. I would just basically, Dave, just take the suggestions you get and basically just, list them.
Okay.
Pretty much. And then everybody can see them, and you'll spend some time. First, you'll have to decide whether you're going with the approval or the denial next time after there's some discussion.
Right.
And then you can fine tune one or the other, and then take a final vote.
Okay. Thank you,
And
Ira.
then another annoying
Do you know
question.
the date of this at this point? For calendar?
Well, our next meeting is in 2 weeks, is the 2nd of July, I believe is the date.
Okay. Then obviously no need for a straw vote.
Well, could I ask one more question, please, Ron?
Sure.
Should I be trying to have the member missing tonight watch this video and also email me suggestions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ira, I'll look to you.
Yeah, yes.
He had forgotten, by the way, his son's high school graduation is tonight. So.
Good, he had a good excuse, yeah.
Good excuse, yes.
Yeah.
And you did say to me he was there at the other two meetings, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So with that, I will entertain a motion to table this application again, unfortunately or fortunately. Motion from someone?
Motion to table.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Okay, you have the names, Marlene?
What, well, I don't want to. I was just
Hey, Ron, could we hold on 1 second?
Yeah,
I think
I
Ira
was
wanted
just going to say,
one thing.
I wasn't quite sure why you tabled something as opposed to just continue the deliberation until July 2nd. I mean,
Okay.
table is a special Roberts device. Then you have to take it off the table and put it on the table and all that. So I think just a motion to continue this deliberation until July 2nd is okay.
A motion to continue the deliberations till
Thank
the
you.
next meeting.
Second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Joel. And thank you for the help, Ira. All in favor?
Okay. Thank you, Ira.
Aye.
All right, good night, everybody.
Ira,
Good
thank
night.
you so much. Appreciate your help and input.
Okay, I'll see you in a second, thanks.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. The next item on our agenda is item 3, application 20-09 plus coastal, or it is a coastal. It's for 16 Holly Park Road. It's map 15, lot 83 in the R2 district. The owner is Jane Porterfield. The applicant is Mike D'Onofrio, and it's a coastal site plan review for rebuilding of a deck and a walkway. So is there someone here from the applicant who can make a presentation?
Yes, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Keith D'Angelo, and I've had a long-standing association with the owners, Jane and Jerry, Jane Porterfield. I'm a small-time builder in Central Connecticut, but I am the owner's rep in this project. And Mike D'Onofrio, who I can't speak more highly of, wonderful fellow, tremendously, a lot of integrity, very efficient, very fine guy, and we enjoyed working together. He has been speaking with on this matter, David Anderson and Mary. They have a lot more of the details than I even do, but simply we have obtained all permits. We've begun work on the raising up of this house along with renovation. And the only change that we are proposing is to connect the oceanside porch to the east porch. At first, when we submitted the plans and we did this design, we were unaware of the fact that we had to raise this house up 5 feet, which is what we did. And this is with regards to the requirement by the DEP. And once that occurred, we realized it was, we were adding 7 steps, and it was kind of a difficult and unwieldy, get out of the front porch, walk down this long set of stairs, take a turn around the house, and then walk up another set of stairs. So it was a combination of practicality after the project began, and we walked through with our owners, and they said, gee, this wraparound porch is beautiful, but it doesn't connect. So the proposal was, and our architect drew up and we submitted a 3.5 foot, well, I guess you'd call it a catwalk or connector, which is supported mainly with diagonal supports. There is one pier that has any weight supporting that you might consider is the only element that violates the footprint or the earth on the ocean or seawall side. Other than that, again, there's no real impact, not a lot of weight, and I think, as is evidenced by the drawing and design, it's certainly does not take away from the beauty and the attractiveness of this home. As a matter of fact, I think it actually adds to the aesthetic. So anyhow, we are here to request permission to allow that connector to be approved.
Does the commission need to put the plan? Obviously, you guys got that as part of the application. Does the commission need me to pull it up on screen? I'm happy to do that if you'd like me to.
Does anybody want to see it on the screen?
Yes.
I don't need to.
You would? Did I hear a yes from someone?
Yeah, I'd like to see
Yeah, I
it.
think that would be helpful.
Gotta navigate over to it. Hold on one second. You guys see that? So it's this proposed deck in purple is what we're talking about, just this connection. And there's a seawall between the developed portion of the property and Long Island Sound. And so really the consideration that the commission is trying to make is whether this proposed deck, which triggers coastal site plan review because it falls within 25 feet of a coastal resource, which in this case is the beach, the face of the seawall and the beach. And that's why it is before the commission. But whether that would have any adverse impact on the coastal resource, I'll give you my opinion on this one, since I think it's really straightforward, is I do not think that a deck connection will have any adverse impact. And so it's a very minor application, but it requires your approval.
Okay. That generate any questions? Seeing that?
There's
Any-
going to be one pier supporting this. You said primarily supported by diagonals, but one pier.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And is that pier, what kind of footer is that pier going into?
It is, you know what? I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. It is one of two. It is either spiral pier that is inserted, or it was a concrete pier with a big foot. I did not get that information from Mike, I'm sorry to say.
Would that make a difference, Dave? Whether it was,
I don't believe so. And the reason I mentioned the seawall is because there is a structural, flood and erosion control structure between that pier and the coastal resource. So I don't think that would have an impact at all. In my opinion.
There is a concrete slab / sidewalk, which has been there and is there and remains there undisturbed between the house and the seawall. That's correct.
Any other questions? Might I have a motion for the coastal site plan?
I'll move.
John, thank you. Second?
I'll second it.
Elliot.
Any further discussion? All in favor for the coastal site plan? Aye.
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 Approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And at the risk of reselling something that's already been sold, and there was method to my madness to wait until the end so that I could not be accused of bribery. But I would tell you that our experience in Madison has been an exceptional one. Down at Town Hall and David Anderson, everyone there, it's been an absolute pleasure. And we've built all over the state. We do a lot of daycare centers that we build schools, and sometimes that process can be miserable. I will tell you that Madison, you guys are a class act, and I want to thank you very, very much.
Well, there's a method to our madness living here along the shore. What we're expecting is having a party for the planning and zoning.
Okay, we'll pass that word along.
Thank you for those kind words. And Dave, they reflect on you, and thank you for all you do for these folks and for everybody for that matter.
Yeah, thanks, Keith.
Thank you, gentlemen. Bye,
Thank you. Night. Okay.
Ron, we have the email I sent the commission. Bill Plunkett is on the meeting. The email I sent the commission about the outdoor movie proposal. So I think we would need to add that to the agenda.
Would anybody make a motion to add item well, 3A, I guess.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we add that item to the agenda, Ron.
Thank you,
I'll
Jim.
second it.
Second by
Giselle.
Okay,
Giselle. Thanks, Giselle. All in-
Giselle.
Aye. Aye, everybody?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, has everybody had the opportunity to see and read the email that Mr. Plunkett sent and Dave relayed to us?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar with it? Okay, I suppose at this point, Dave, we'll turn it over to Bill Plunkett.
Yeah, I think that's good. Go ahead, Bill, if you can hear us.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. So, in lieu of this COVID, actually, I was thinking about doing this last year before the COVID thing, but we're trying to drum up ways to get more interest in town, do sort of fun things that are safer than sitting in a building, for example. So I've proposed this idea of doing outdoor movies on the property that I own that's next to Moxie. It's to the south of Moxie. Eventually, I have made an application for and got zoning approvals for a tent on the property that we'll be doing outdoor dining with at some point. I've kept the restaurant closed to date until I feel more comfortable with what's going on, because I'm not comfortable with what's going on. But I think I will be in the next couple of weeks. But until then, I'd like to keep Moxie's name germane, and also do something fun that doesn't cost anybody money. So to that end, I had a bunch of moviegoers, kids, but they had to leave because their parents told them to leave. But I'm going to show you this. This is the area. That's Wall Street right there. Can you see all right?
No.
A little dark.
Is it? Okay.
We can see a little bit.
At any rate, there's these chairs and blankets and whatnot, like a mock movie night. And down about 75, maybe 100 feet. I don't know if you can see that. That's my truck with a carpet over it to make it look like it's a movie screen. So there would be essentially this area, probably called 65 or 75 by maybe 100. I met with Trent yesterday to go over this. He was enthusiastic. He was very supportive about it. We talked about some guidelines of keeping separating distances. I was going to spray paint the lawn 6-foot circles, essentially, sort of randomly, so that people would understand what that actually meant on the lawn. We would use I think I have about a room for about 50, maybe 60 people, which he seemed not to have a problem with. We would use the bathroom inside the restaurant. Whatever foodstuffs, we talked about making food outside. He dissuaded me from doing that. So we'd have a very light hot dog, hamburger kind of thing inside that we would deliver outside. I have a liquor permit on this property. So we would sell beer, wine. I wouldn't think we'd sell much, if any, hard liquor, maybe some mixed drinks, mojitos, that kind of thing, or sangria. The kids would get soda, free popcorn, that kind of thing. And it typically would be kid friendly, but adults could sit through it. Well, I think my first movie is going to be Elf. And as the warmer it gets, the colder it gets, I'll make it warmer. But that's generally the thing. It's a very low impact, and it's just a way of getting things going again without me turning on a bunch of lights, getting all my employees back, and try to make money when I only can have 50% of seats. So whatever that's worth. So I'm trying to stress that it would be very low impact, and it would start, what time is it now? 8:30, just at dusk, but maybe 8:15, and go on for 2 hours, and then it's over and you go home. So that's my intention. That's what I'd like to do.
Okay. Bill, what's the seating capacity of Moxie?
128.
Okay, and you're limited to 50% of that, right?
Right.
So the maximum capacity you could have would be about 70 people.
70 people dining.
Uh,
It's a little bit less than that, 64.
Okay. Aren't you limited by the current state mandates to restaurants, 50% period?
No, I don't think that's what it says. This wouldn't, it's on a different property. So talking to Trent about it, he seemed to think that wouldn't fall in either phase 2 or, phase 1, 2, or 3. And quite frankly, it'd probably be on an off night anyway. We would do it probably, when we do reopen, we're going to do it 5 days, not 6. We have Monday off. And we're going to probably stay closed Tuesday. So most likely be one of those nights anyway. Not most likely, it would be one of those nights. Probably Tuesday night. At which point there'd be nobody here except the moviegoers.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, how often are you going to do this?
Once a week.
Once a week, Saturday night? Is that the idea?
Well, until I get a better understanding of what Ron was talking about, I would say a Monday or Tuesday night. But if I understand that we can have this essentially any night, and it won't upset or interfere with the 50% or whatever that percentage is these days, and not conflict with that, then I would choose to do it any night of the week I wanted to. I would have to clear that up with Trent. But when I did meet with him yesterday for about a half an hour, 45 minutes here, he didn't seem to think there was any, other than the distancing thing, he didn't see any problem. He had 2 issues. The cooking outside, which he didn't want us to do. I couldn't have porta potties, which I understand. And the flow of that, going in one door and going out the other. He didn't indicate that there was a problem with this being conflicting with the 50% for the general sit-down restaurant thing. But that's, I don't know particularly, but if that is the case, then I would say we can make it contingent upon it being on a Monday or Tuesday night. If it isn't the case, then I'd prefer to do it as I see fit. Weather pending, you might get bad weather on a Monday and Tuesday, and the weather's great on Wednesday or something like that. So it's not unlike what the Wharf did for the kids and did very well. They did it on a smaller scale, but I think they did it on Thursday nights. And they had marshmallows for the kids, and Mr. Duquesne did it just to be a good guy. And we do this on a slightly larger scale.
And Bill, how close is the nearest residential building?
It's across the street. I would say it's 100 feet, maybe 150 yards, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But let me just say that whatever is going to happen here on this site will pale in comparison to what happens at Moxie on any given Saturday night. And I've always said, and I think David will agree with me, this is a commercial zone, not a residential zone. We are respectful and never had. I think we had 1 complaint over 5 years. So we are respectful of it, but just so you understand, I don't think it won't be anything more than the noise generated at Moxie in any given night.
Bill, I just want to make sure I'm understanding the correspondence correctly. Dave sent you an email with some concerns. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I see here in my computer, maybe I have it sorted. I see a letter. I don't see a response to Dave. I see a letter sent to Sue. Who is Sue?
Peggy?
I don't know. It says Sue.
Who's the first selectman?
I think he meant Bill. I think he meant Peggy.
Yeah, Peggy Sue, whatever.
Is that to Dave that you sent to Peggy?
What did it say? I don't remember, quite frankly.
So I just want to make sure one's related to the other. And it's
What
not-
does it say? Because I can't.
Well, it talks about movie plans and things.
Yeah, I sent it to Dave, the fire marshal, Trent, whoever's on that COVID board. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, there's no COVID board, but.
Isn't there some sort of, well, whatever. I thought those were four main.
But just so I understand, in essence, it was not addressed to Dave, the response. It went to Peggy, and that's Peggy Sue. Okay, now I get it.
That's right. I think it went to all of them. Did you get that, Dave? I thought I saw.
I was copied on an email.
Right.
Okay. I mean, it was intended to be.
Right. So I mistakenly thought that there was this group of four, essentially maybe five. That was Dave, Peggy, Trent, and Sam DeBurr that were sort of instrumental in figuring out what could and could not work from a practical level, having to do with COVID. So and that was maybe I'm mistaken. So that was that emails was sent because of that reason. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Any questions from anybody else at this moment?
Yeah, I have a question. If you can just explain the outline of the event in terms of placement of the tents and where people would sit, like.
Well, the tent is sort of a separate issue at this point. It would be, I don't know, can you see my truck right there, kind of?
Yes.
Yeah, so the tent would be roughly 10 feet, or maybe at the other side of the truck. And the screen itself would probably be 20 or 25 feet in front of that. So if you went from that truck, kind of where I'm standing right now, as a matter of fact, which doesn't do you any good, you have no perspective, but they're not meant to be that close. And the tent, the screen will not stay up permanently. Every night it'll come down, and then next week it'll go back up. So you won't even know it's here if there's no movie. So it's a very temporal, John had an inflatable one of his that seemed to work pretty well, but I think I would just use, screen kind of thing.
So so the purpose of the tent is the food or for people?
The tent is the tent is a separate issue, having to do with increasing our outdoor dining allowed in phase 1, I think. Yes, where we're allowed to take 50% of our indoor dining, and bring it outside. The new thing under phase 2 is that whatever outdoor dining you were allowed or permitted under phase 1, that was a part and parcel different from what you already had, you could keep sort of as a bonus to use for because no matter what you do, you're still going to be down a lot of seats. So I think that tent is meant to do just that. And then at some point, I'm going to come back to you with another application more formally having to do with using that tent for other purposes.
Hey, Bill, if I could ask a question.
Yeah.
If I understood you earlier, and Giselle, this may clarify your question as well. The tent is really irrelevant to this movie night, is it not?
Yeah, it's good to talk about, but it's the tent is in the interim be used to get 40 more outdoor seats, which were allowed under the current.
So, but the tent is outdoor dining for Moxie, and if I heard you correctly, you're planning movie night on nights that Moxie is closed. Until
I have a better idea that week. If we can have a movie the same night we're open. Ron brought that part up, and quite frankly, I don't know the answer to it. So I'll have to talk to Trent about it. But if we can, I might want to put it on a Thursday night. But if I can't, I'd be happy to do it on Monday, Tuesday.
Okay. But people dining in the tent would not necessarily be moviegoers.
No, probably two separate things, quite frankly. And maybe, I mean, as you saw, that they can work in conjunction with one another, and it's sort of fun to have one activity. I mean, that's the whole idea here, is to make things more active outside. No one wants to go inside. That's why I'm not open. And it's, so I'm trying to do things outside that are, it's like not a carnival, but just more fun thing. And eventually this tent, I would ask for approvals to use it for maybe I'm thinking about doing catering events. So it's, weddings down the road, or possibly, an Oktoberfest, that kind of thing. Or maybe it's part of, what do you call it? The thing they do on Friday night in the Green, whatever that's called. So different things that work with the restaurant somehow, but are either completely different or significantly different, but still work in conjunction with the restaurant. Because I'll tell you right now, there is no way restaurants are going to make money in the near future at 50%. I can tell you right now, I won't even open if that's the way it's going to be for next year. It's just not worth it. Because like in the next 6 months, the only restaurants that are going to be viable are the ones that stayed closed, or like something like the John has, where there's a lot of outdoor dining, or Grand Pizza, or the Chinese restaurant. But if you're like a sit-down restaurant like mine, you'll be dead in the water unless you can do other things that augment the interior dining. And I think a lot of restaurants are going to have a tough road to hoe because of that. So this is why I'm trying to think ahead and say, okay, I want to stay open. What do I do? I have a movie night. Am I making any money? No, but it's keeping the name out there, so people can still have fun. And the tent down the road might be more retail based. And then things clean up a year for they get a vaccine, whatever it is, vaccine, and the playing field changes. But for now, I have to do this kind of stuff. I have to, but I think it's smart to do.
I'd be, my own opinion, I'll be interested to see what other commissioners think. I think it's a novel idea, Bill.
I've had a lot of those.
Your letter to, in response to Dave that went to Peggy, you talk, there's a clamoring, and indeed there is. And I have severe concerns over crowd size and crowd control. East Wharf was a quiet little beach until people started coming to the beach and getting turned away at Hammonasset. Police have been called down there to, clear traffic, backing 20 and 30 cars up East Wharf Road. Having a movie with the 70, as you say, maybe a little less, seems extremely problematic.
Well, then you don't let me do it.
Turn out for the carnival, when you had that, which was terrific on a Saturday afternoon. But how in the world do you limit people? And you say you might be doing it some nights while the tent is serving dinners.
Well, the fact of the matter is there's only so many people that can fit on this thing. If you had no COVID restrictions, I don't think you could put 100 here. It's not that big. At the block party we had, there wasn't 100 people sitting on this hill. And it's sort of human nature not to want to sit next to each other. At least it's mine.
But at this point in time, the clamoring is the operative word. How would you control it if 2,000 people decide they'd like to go to a movie?
The property can't hold that many people.
Well, but they're going to be out there. It's already been on Facebook. Coming soon from Moxie, movies on the outdoors. You're promoting it like it's an unlimited capacity, and it's so damn limited because of COVID. And of course, it's not a huge area to begin with. It's not Salt Meadow Park, but how in the world do you manage to control even who drives down to check it out, let alone walk the sidewalks? Isn't
that what you want, though? Don't you want people driving by and checking it out, and people walking down the sidewalk? Wow, that's cool. And otherwise it's just sedentary, boring town, and that's the problem. People don't do these kinds of things.
We want people going to the surf club too. We want them going to
God
East
bless
Wharf.
them.
But there's a way. It's got to be held in control. It's not open season. and I'd like to know a plan you have to control that.
Well, what do you think I should do?
You're the applicant, not me, Bill.
Okay. Well, I think there has to be an element of good faith. I know that I could tell you for a fact that any given night at Moxie in the parking lot, there could be 150 people, 200 people there. We don't have a problem controlling that. If it was a large field, like something at the surf club, that might be a bigger issue. But there's only so many places to. I think, in other words, it's self-regulating. I think. Other than that, I really couldn't tell. I mean, I could have a police here. I do whatever you think I need to do. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it'll be fun and not huge, but sort of. I don't anticipate 100 people sitting here. I really don't.
Any thoughts, comments, other commission members? I'm kind of monopolizing.
Yeah, Bill. Okay, so Ron, yeah, my view is I would be supportive of letting him go ahead and trying it. If we find that we have issues and the police come back and say this is out of control, then I think we should have the ability to say, okay, that's it. I mean, this isn't going to be a permanent thing, right, Dave?
I'm not representing the application. I've not been provided any information beyond what you guys have been provided.
So what it will be is like immediately till September 15th or something. Until it gets cold out. I mean, it's been cold out lately, so you probably couldn't do it. Tonight's been a beautiful day. But so, the months of June, July, August, and the first 2 weeks of September. One night a week.
So to me, this is reminiscent of what we allowed at the Deacon John Graves house. The place, because that was for a limited period of time, some restrictions on it.
You remember what those restrictions were?
I don't off the top of my head.
I do. They were the hours, but don't forget, those were sold tickets for less than a one mass appeal audience.
Maybe that's what I do. I sell tickets. I'd rather not.
They came before planning and zoning with a plan and for the proper permitting and so on and so forth had been accomplished. We don't have any of that done.
Well, this is meant to be an informal, thank you. Let's see, it can be fun. I'm not building it's supposed to be a fun, simple thing. It's 50, 60 people come here once a week to watch a movie. And that's it. And if I start going the whole public hearing process, it's September. And I lost I lost summer completely.
I don't know. Does anybody else? I have a thought, but I want to hear some more thoughts from the commission before I share it. No?
Ron, it's Peter. I guess I share Jim's view that I would guardedly support it, but we've got to have an ability to pull this thing back because I also worry tremendously about the social distancing issue. 50 or 60 kids running up and down the street, uncontrolled, not taking care of themselves, being safe or safe with others. So I think it's worth a try because I think the notion has merit, but I really do think we need to be prepared if we get a lot of complaints and people are upset that it gets shut down.
My thought would be to maybe consider, and I'm throwing this not to build, to like we did for the carnival, we gave it a tacit try it and do it, and see whether neighbors complain, whether all the teenagers and kids, on bicycles ride from all over to clog up the streets, or lots of parents bring their children or come as adults. See how it is, because that to me is the biggest problem. the capacity inside is finite, but the buzz around it is infinite. And to do it and allow it on an experimental or test basis in the near term for Bill to go ahead with it is one thing. And coincident with that, a filing with P&Z, like the Lyric Stage did, and hear the thing through after this first experiment, if you want to call it that, and see how to proceed, if that makes any sense to anybody. I understand
Makes
Bill
sense to me.
play, but that doesn't mean things couldn't be worked a little bit in parallel, and we'd have a little experience as to what this created or didn't
That's
create.
exactly what we did the block party last year. We had a limited, let's see how this thing works. And if it comes off okay, maybe we'll do it again someday. And it wasn't meant to be a, continued on and on and on kind of thing. If it didn't work. And I have no problem with saying, okay, let's see what happens. Because quite frankly, if it doesn't go well, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to hear complaints from these people. God, no. So I don't have a problem with that at all. I'd be perfectly happy with it.
What does the commission think about that idea?
I think it makes sense.
Joel, I think you're muted. We can't hear you.
Multiple devices, sorry. I like the idea. I have no doubt in my mind at all about Bill's intents or his his vision. I think that the community at large, could throw a wrench in things, and there could be some that ruin it for others. But I think it's absolutely worth trying, because it's a great thing, that he's doing. I think it would help people, have one more reason to get some fresh air and get out. And I would definitely be in favor of us, kind of running, maybe a couple trial events and see how it goes. And then, look at it to make it a slightly more regular occurrence.
Let me just add one more, again, that as far as the social distancing and the COVID thing, Trent is going to be, he's going to be every time we do it, or I can't remember what her name is, his assistant. And we're not going to be flying blind with it. He's going to be monitoring this thing just like he's monitoring everything else that's going on in this town. So just know that somebody's going to be looking over us. And it's just not me saying, yeah, that's good enough. That's 6 feet. That's 6 feet.
And I understand that part. My thinking is it's what goes on outside the rope, so to speak, with just, again, trying to get into the surf club with, you see everything on Facebook, people parking at Lowry Field and all over the place. They may not got a seat at the movie, but they may stand out in the sidewalk. They may stand in the street. It becomes a victim of its own success.
Yeah, I was thinking about one thing I could do possibly is you have ropes up at either end of the driveway, and you give tickets, you don't charge people for it, and you have, I don't know, whatever we can do according to Trent. Say it's 50. I give out 50 tickets, and that's it. You don't get a ticket, you can't come in. At least in the interim, till we figure what's happening with the disease. But that might be a good way to do it.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Suggest that. Yeah, I was actually going to suggest that. Great idea.
Yeah. So let's do that. Maybe maybe there's a raffle afterwards, and the kids get a whatever. One of the tickets is whatever. So you can make fun out of it as opposed to just being something that you can and can't do.
If you got a lot of kids, you may not get a lot of business.
Well, the idea is when I say kids, kids, I think my daughter, well, she's probably young for this, but 3, 4, Dave's daughter. Now I'm looking for the, hellions here on skateboards and whatnot. I don't think it's going to be their speed anyway. It's not cool enough.
And not till 10 or 11 o'clock at night either, I suppose.
No. It moves an hour and a half. But the projector I use with certain amount of lumens that actually play in daylight, it's subdued light. wells, so it doesn't have to be, like right now, it's, it's deep dusk, if you will.
Yeah.
It would show the movie perfectly, but it could have started an hour ago, half an hour ago. And at some level, the kids don't care anyway. They're just looking at the screen, having fun. They can care what's playing.
Does that make sense to the commission to give it a trial run? Give Bill the go ahead to do it once?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And if
Let
Bill,
me
you
ask-
could, if you could work with,
I'm sorry, Ron.
and if you could work and coordinate with Dave something to bring before us after the first movie takes place, then we might be able to make some clear decisions as
No,
to
that's
what.
fine. That's fair, more than fair. My question to Dave would be, and to the board, would it be considered a minor application in the DV district, or would be it a major application? In other words, is it something that the board would want to see, but it's not necessarily a public hearing, or?
So it would be a site plan application. I defer to the commission on whether they felt it was warranted a public hearing or not.
But we don't have to answer that question now. I'm just sort of curious whether, from a timing standpoint. So let's just get this first one under our belt. And as I'm doing that, I'll prepare with Dave's help an application to go forward.
Dave, thanks, Bill. Dave, in light of what Bill was talking about, a coronavirus committee, what other sign-offs might you need? You already talked to Trent. He's talked to us, Sam, anybody else that needs to be?
Sam DeBura, it's always good to let the police chief know for any events that are happening downtown.
Yeah.
That's really probably the main folks that need to be involved.
I would ask the chief to have, which just like I did at the block party, they can't be on private property. So I would ask the chief to have a patrol car just sort of monitor up and down the street. He could be here for an hour and a half, why not? And just go up and down Wall Street on a regular basis to make sure it's not getting out of hand. But I personally think it's going to self-regulate. Now I'll be here, and if it starts getting really stupid, I'll turn the movie off. But get out of here. Thanks, everyone. Now get out. This is supposed to be something fun. I mean, if it turns into a shit show, then everybody out.
So is everybody comfortable in it? By the way, the alternates are part of this. This is just a discussion, so I haven't mentioned that, but certainly Dr. Hay, Ron, Peter, chime in with your thoughts too.
I just need a little clarification. Is your intent to have this be a one-time occurrence or a few occurrences prior to coming back before the commission?
That's a good question. I guess it's a question of, let's see how the first one goes. And I would ask, because I don't know how long the application process is going to take, whether it's 6 weeks, it depends where you fall on the docket, what type of application it is. Is it a public hearing? Is it a site plan review? That could take, as Dave will tell you, 6-8 weeks. So I would ask that if the first one goes well, just sort of do it. If the first one goes well, I go to Dave, can I do it next week? Yeah, it was fine. And if that one goes well, so fair, we're not writing anything in stone until we have a formal approval from the board. But at any time after the first one, if the first one goes well, like say, Dave, can we do another one? He said, yeah, but you need this. Or no, Bill, it was horrible. Or we bring Trent on board. Any idea, how can I make it better? He wants me to spray paint lines, which I was going to do anyway. Maybe you come here the first night and see how it goes. Have a hamburger and see how things work. So your question is well put, because I was thinking the exact same thing. In other words, I'd rather not have just one and not be able to do it again until I get approvals for the board. Maybe that's too much, but I would do.
Dave, could we leave it this way? That if the commission thinks this experiment makes sense, that we give Bill the authority or the permission to do one. And if he was interested in in proceeding with filing the appropriate paperwork, to do it on a continual basis, but we give you the administrative authority to, after the first one, to make a determination that even though this may be in process, that you could administratively give him the go-ahead to do a second or not do a second one. Would that be too much for you?
What criteria am I using to make those decisions? That's the only thing I get concerned about. I mean, if I have one person complain to me, yeah, you gotta shut this thing down, it's a problem. Does that mean it's a problem? Or, you know, I get a little bit uncomfortable with not having some clear guidelines.
Well, I think personally the things would be, the arbiters would be what Trent, the issue would be Trent and the police. Now, whether someone doesn't like the movie from across the street, they wish you played Cinderella, I don't care, and you wouldn't care. And personally, my position is, if there's a house in a commercial zone, you know, we are in a commercial zone. And as long as the thing is not completely out of hand, and I think we could all understand what that means at some level, I think we should be able to say, okay, we got a complaint from one of the because.
Well, I think it needs more, quite frankly, than the police, right? Because the approval to do this comes through P&Z.
Yeah, okay.
And I certainly have, and I'm not trying to dump this in Dave's lap, don't get me wrong, but I certainly Dave to realize it looked like it went okay. Let him try it again, or there were serious problems. And I think it's worth that the commission weigh in on this and we reconsider things.
Yeah, so
During the application. So, but I don't want to put you in a bad spot either, Dave.
Well, maybe a way to do it is to authorize a certain number of events over a certain time period. And then upon my recommendation, I could, if I thought there was an issue, I could bring that issue to you and you could have the ability to rescind it in advance if it's an issue. So if, you know, he has one next week and I come back to you, you know, at our next meeting and say, it was great, no issues, then that approval continues. If I say it was a real problem, then you could rescind it, but maybe just give them approval through, I don't know, July, you know, then, you know, August 1st or whatever we determine. If we think it's a once a week thing, allow that once a week through that period of time. That'll give them enough time to get in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission for what could be a more permanent approval. And then just authorize me, if I noticed any issues, to communicate those to the commission, and you'd have the ability to rescind through July.
How about three?
Yeah.
Why don't we give Bill 3 to try? And I say that because I think these things have to get they have to build a little bit. They have to, you know, maybe something won't go well the first time and he can tweak it and it'll go better the second time, and then he can tweak it and go great the third time. And, you know, at that point we can decide whether we want to go forward. Just a thought.
yeah, I think
That's
John,
fine by me.
I think that's a good idea. I think the whole point about not having Dave be the sole decision maker on this, which really doesn't want to, we could do 3. We could just have it on our agenda, not this next meeting maybe, but the following meeting. That would be a month out, where we would have some history behind us and make a decision then.
I just want to say, I think it'd be nice to get some feedback about how the social distancing part of it went after at least the first one. That's the part of this that I'm most nervous about, that the social distancing, just as Peter said, you know, won't be maintained. So I wonder if there's any way that we can hear back from Trent or somebody about how that part went and whether tweaks need to be made before the second event happens.
I can certainly ask him to do that.
You can make that a condition. He has to come over here and monitor it from time to time.
Yeah,
So-
and Bill's already volunteered to limit the number of people in attendance, so that
That's a good point.
distance.
I forgot I did that.
Social distancing, but at the same time, these things can take a life of their own. The kids will watch 30 minutes of the movie, then they'll get running around and, who knows. Bill, you might do 2 of these and decide, what was I thinking,
Well, yeah. Now they just keep on talking. I'm like, yeah. This thing, but John has a good point. This thing may play out in a month. I'm like, wow, this is dumb. Or it's just if a lot of things I do, it's like no good deed goes unpunished. So I'll do this, and something, some kid will get run over. God knows what happens, and that'll be the end of it. But it's worth a shot.
So, Bill, would you want to it's challenging, it's dangerous, right, for me to start brainstorming, but would you want to drop the application now, and we would say, hey, there's this number of events that would go on. That way there's the lead time to get on the docket. So if you have whatever the number is, 1, 2, 3 successful events, then boom, we're in, and you're not set back, 6 or 8 weeks. Because if it doesn't work out, you can always yank the application, right?
Yeah, no, I've already been working on it, presuming I need it. So I started too, like the slight, the DVD with that's less impactful, and the other, which we would apply under. So I've already started both. And the site plan, I already have surveys. I have, it was just a question of, trying to accurately pick how the seating is going to go. But you just have to say it's going to be a 6-foot distancing. The problem's going to be the kids running around all the place. But that's going to have the parents responsible for that at some level. So I'm open to any of these guys, any of these ideas, and I'm amenable to everything, really. I just want to try it, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, that's okay.
I think it's worth a try.
Yeah, why not?
Elliot?
I think it's worth a shot.
Peter?
I'm there, worth a shot.
Tom?
Same.
I think it's pretty much, anybody disagree with that? Let's make it easy. Okay, I think that pretty much settles it. Dave, is there anything you want to tie in with it?
I'd like you guys to make a motion and the number of events, and if there's any other parameters that you wanted to adhere to, just so it's in the record.
All right. John, you had a suggestion, so why don't you care to make the motion?
Sure. Yeah, I move that we allow the applicant to conduct 3 events, at which point we will analyze and the feedback that we receive, and approve from there, I guess. Am I missing anything, Dave?
No, that's fine. I think Bill represented the days or nights that he might have them, and the general hours. If you're comfortable with what he's represented, then I think your motion is sufficient.
And that's assuming that this doesn't override any decisions that would come from either the health department, fire marshal.
Yeah, so the reason why Trent has involvement over this is because we're still under emergency public health declaration. So if Trent decides that this cannot happen, that's the answer.
Okay.
So.
Do I have a second to John's motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Joel, I think I saw your hand. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Bill, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, guys. We'll see how it goes. Thanks. Have a good night, everybody.
Night, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Interesting idea. Novel. Next, we have approval of some minutes. Elliot?
Yes, I have planning meeting minutes from May 21st. Members present: Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Manofsky, Mathers, Miller, McDowell. Alternates present, Ruse and Bodison. We'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
I'll second it.
Is that May 21st?
That was May 21st, yes.
I have amendments for that.
Please go ahead, Marlene.
Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So page 7, the middle of the first paragraph. Let's see. It says, I don't have the exact words. I made the amendment. Sorry, I don't have the minutes right here, but what I changed it to read is where it starts out. I changed it to say, Robin Phillips of 880 Boston Post Road introduced himself on behalf of 11 neighbors along Boston Post Road and East Wharf Road. He stated that he does not believe there is anyone in this town who does not think that redevelopment of the general's residence is necessary. And that's a change. And then there's a comma. However, these are the exact words that are in the minutes. There are 5 concerns they raised to the developers, and the developers agreed to the suggestions offered by the neighbors. Therefore, they support the application. Chairman Clark asked if some of those neighbors are abutters to this property, and Mr. Phillips stated that they are indeed. That's one amendment. Should I just go on with the next amendment? Also,
Let me just explain what changed. Was that the way it was worded, it sounded as Mr. Phillips was saying that they were, the neighbors were opposed to the project when indeed they were supportive of it. So it was a double negative situation, right, Marlene?
right, there was what he actually totally said was, firstly, let me say that I don't believe there's anyone in this town who doesn't think that redevelopment of the general's residence is necessary. And I think when I originally wrote it, I said that they don't think that that there was anything wrong with the redevelopment. You probably have the minutes there. You could see the way I originally wrote it. Elliot, did you find that paragraph?
I did not.
It's the middle, it was the middle of the first paragraph, and you should see the word, you should see in where, however, there are 5 concerns they raised to the developers. So it would, the amendments go above the 3 sentences I said. Robin Phillips of 880 Boston Post Road. David, do you want to show me that page 7? Can you show me page 7 or not?
Page 7, including the front cover page, right? That one?
Yeah, that's page 7. So you can see where it says there are 11 neighbors along Boston Post Road on the far right there. See, because I spelled out the words 11 neighbors on the far right.
How far down on the page, on that paragraph?
It is the middle of the first paragraph, and on the far right, you should see the numeral 11. Because I used the numeral 11 neighbors.
Okay.
So that's the section that's getting changed. It's going to read, Robin Phillips of 880 Boston Post Road introduced himself on behalf of 11 neighbors along Boston Post Road and East Wharf Road. He stated that he does not believe there is anyone in this town who does not think that redevelopment of the general's residence is necessary. However, there are 5 concerns they raised to the developers, and the developers agreed to the suggestions offered by the neighbors. Therefore, they support the application.
Okay.
Chairman Clark asked if some of those neighbors are abutters to this property, and Mr. Phillips stated that they are indeed. Okay, so we're also on page 7. It's also the middle of the first paragraph, and it says, do you see a portion that says suggestions offered by the neighbors, therefore they support the application? Do you see those words? And then you see Matthew Bennett of 917 Boston Post Road stated that he is among 6 neighbors.
So that's below where you're,
Yeah, that's below the 11, that's below the first.
Dave's bringing it up on the screen.
Oh, that's good. So we're on Matthew Bennett, right there. Matthew Bennett of 1917 Boston Post Road stated that
Okay.
he's among those 6 neighbors. So you get down to the sentence that says, while they would love to see the general's residence preserved in its present form, that is not possible, Mr. Phillips stated. That is supposed to say Mr. Bennett stated. Mr. Phillips did not state that. So that's going to be changed to read, that is not possible, Mr. Bennett stated. Okay?
Gotcha.
The last amendment is on page 8 at the bottom of the page. There's a vote. Okay, this was because of copying and pasting. Secretary Hitchcock made the motion to accept special exception permit modification, and then it says it was seconded by Commissioner Roos and unanimously approved. It should read, it was seconded by Commissioner Roos and approved. And so you delete the word unanimously and use the word approved, because the vote was 8-1 to 0.
Yep.
Not unanimously approved, sorry about that. So those are the 3 amendments. So I guess, what do you just do? Make a motion to, unless other people found other errors. Did anybody else find any?
Nope.
I would make a motion.
Sorry about those errors.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
There we go.
Okay.
Second.
Further discussion, Elliot?
Any further discussions? Any further changes? Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Thanks, Marlene. That's your edition of True Confessions.
You're welcome.
You do.
All right, the other set of minutes I have are for the planning meeting on June 4th. Members present: Clark, Madison, Hitchcock, Berlin, Podolsky, Mathers, Miller, McDowell, and alternates present: Ruse and Bodison. And we'll entertain a motion.
Motion to
I'll
approve.
move to approve the minutes.
Second. Ron. Any discussions or changes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. And that's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Elliot. Commission Chair, I don't have anything other than to say thank you. I'm sorry, we're going to be continuing another day on Old Toll Road. I've never seen anything develop quite like this one did, but that's what a high school graduation does to a group of 8. So, but thanks for all your input and thoughts and allowing Ira to speak and take it all in. And that's all I have.
The only thing I have, I just
For what
wanted
it's
to let the
worth,
commission,
Ron,
real quick, I just want to let the commission know that Ron Bodenson sent me an email. He had to bow out a little early tonight. He said he had to return unexpectedly to the hospital after a 5-hour back surgery last week. So that's why he was in a bit of pain, I think, and a little uncomfortable during the meeting, so. So hopefully he's doing okay.
Us too. Joel, did you say something?
I was just gonna say, high school graduation, I can remember getting a bunch of emails asking me on deployment if I could dial into a meeting because, there was only an even number of people to hold a vote for officers, at one point a few years back, so. Luckily, I was able to bow out because there are distinct laws and regulations against, me being on active duty and participating in local government.
I remember that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Dave, do you have anything more other than Ron's situation?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, again, thank you, everybody. We'll see you in a couple weeks. And in the meantime, maybe we'll see you at the movies. I don't know.
I think you just need a motion to adjourn. Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Elliott. All in
Second.
favor? All that one.
Aye.
Good night.